The Catherine Wheel. Our Lady of Tharsis. "Come on, lad, come!" You hear a voice call, and, peering through the crowd for its source, so familiar, you see him. There, past the sherbet sellers and the raucous pastry hawkers, past the crowds of hopeful penitential mendicants and poor sisters of Tharsis who press close to the dignitary's rostrum, past the psalm-singing Cathars and the vendors of religious curios. There, he's coming for you, Neo Nassim, with hand outstretched. Through steam and smoke and constables wielding shock-staves who try to keep the crowd away from the man of the moment, here he comes, just for you, your grandfather, Tam Engineer. You look at your mother and father who swell with pride and say, "Yes, Nan, go on, go with him." So he takes your hand and leads you up through the pressing crowd, and the people cheer and wave at you. But you have not time to wave back, or even make out their faces, because your head is whirling with the shouts and the music and the cries of the vendors. The people part before Tam Engineer like grass before the scythe. Now you're on the rostrum beside him, and every one of those thousands of people crushing into the station falls silent as the old man holds up the summoner for all to see. There's a wonderful quiet for a moment, then a hiss of steam and the chunt-chunt of rumbling wheels. And, like every last one of those thousands of people, you let your breath out in a great sigh, because out from the pressure shed doors comes the greatest of the great, the fabulous Catherine of Tharsis, at the head of the last Aries Express. Do you see pride in Tam Engineer's eye? Or is that merely the light catching it as he winks to you, and quick as a flash throws you into the control cab? He whispers something to you which is lost beneath the cheering and the music, but you hear the note of pride in it, and you think that is just right, for the Class 88 Catherine of Tharsis has never looked as well as she does on this her final run. The black and gold livery of Bethlehem Aries glows with love, and sacred cherry branches are crossed on the nose above the sun-bright polished relief of the Blessed Lady herself. Well-wishers have stuck holy medals and icons all over the inside of the cab, too. Looking at them, all leads you on to realize that the cab is much smaller than you'd ever imagined. Then you see the scars, where the computer modules have been torn out to make room for a human driver. And you remember that all those nights when you lay awake in bed, pretending that the thunder of wheels was the night mail, the lady was far away, hauling 100-car ore trains on the automated run from Iron Hills to Bessemer. Since before you were born, Catherine of Tharsis has been making that slow pull up the kilometre-high Illawarra bank. You've never seen her as she is today, the pride of Bethlehem Aries, but your imagination has. Now the people are boarding, the dignitaries and the faithful, and the train enthusiasts, and the folk who just want to be there at the end of a little piece of history. There they are, filing into the 20 cars and taking their seats for the 8-hour journey. "Hurry up! Hurry up!" Tam Engineer says, anxious to be off. He pours you a sherbet from the small coal chest, and you sip it, feeling the cool grittiness of it on your tongue, counting the passengers. 80, 90, 100, still a bit dazed that you are one of them yourself. Then the doors seal. Sss. Steam billows. The crowd stands back excited and expectant, but not as excited or expectant as you. Down the line a red light turns green. The old man grins and taps instructions into the computer. Behind you the drowsy gin wakes and roars in fury, but is tightly held in its magnetic bottle. Just as well, you think, because your grandfather has told you that it's as hot as the centre of the sun back there. The crowds are really cheering now, and the bands are playing for all they're worth, and every loco in the yard, even the dirty old locals, are sounding their horns in salute as Catherine of Tharsis gathers speed. The constables are trying to keep back the crazy wheel-symboled Cathars who are throwing flower petals onto the track in front of you. Grandfather Tam is grinning from ear to ear and sounding the triple steam horns like the trumpets of Judgment Day, as if to say, make way, this is a real train." The train picks up speed slowly, accelerating up the long upgrade called Jaha Incline under full throttle, up through the shanty towns and their thrown-together ramshackle stations whose names you've memorized like a mantra. Jashna, Pulwani, Wagga Wagga, Benstown, Parkenbank, Llandaif, Aitchison, Saltbeds, Menangle Loop. Now you're away from the stink and the press of the shanties, out into the open fields, and you cheer as Grandfather Tom opens up the engines and lets the lady run. Catherine of Tharsis throws herself at the magical 300-kilometre-per-hour speed barrier, and in the walled fields by the side of the track, men with oxen and auto-planters stop and look up from the soil to wave at the black gold streak. "Faster, Grandfather, faster!" you shriek, and Grandfather Tom smiles and orders, "More speed! More speed!" The fusion engines reply with a howl of power. Catherine of Tharsis finds that time barrier effortlessly and shatters it, and at 355 kilometers per hour, the last ever Aries Express heads out into the Grand Valley. For a long time, I moved without style or feeling, wearing simple homespun frocks and open sandals in cold weather. My hair I let grow into thick staring mats. My nails began to curl at the ends. When I washed, only when people complained of the smell, I did so in cold water, even though some mornings I would shiver uncontrollably and catch sight in the mirror of my hollow blue face. I permitted myself that one vanity, the mirror, as a record of my progress toward spirituality. When I saw those dull eyes following me, I would hold their gaze and whisper, the mortification of the flesh, the denial of the body, until they looked away with an expression other than disgust. I allowed myself only the simplest foods, uncooked, unprocessed, and as close to natural as I could take it, for the most part vegetable. 2 meals a day, a breakfast, and in the evening a dinner, with a glass of water at midday. Cold, of course, but with the taste of commissary chemicals to it. Patrick fears that I'm wasting to a ghost before his eyes. I reassure him that I'm merely abolishing the excess and taking on a newer, purer form. Purity, I whisper. Spirituality. Purity, he says. Spirituality? I'll show you purity. I'll show you spirituality. It's us, Kathy. We are purity. We are spirituality. Because of the life we share together. It's the love that's pure, the love that's spiritual. Poor Patrick. He cannot understand. I've seen the needle, and it said, "This is purity." Some showed me the secret spaces of their bodies and said, "Here is spirituality." Others held up the bottles for me to see. "Look, purity, escape." And I've seen the books, the red books, the blue books, the great brown ones, dusty with age, which say, "Come inside. Many have gone this way to wisdom before you." What a pity the blue books contradict the red books, and the brown books cannot be read because they're so old. And you, Patrick, you're the slave of the book. You call it freedom. I have another name for what you give the name of political expression. I've seen 1,000 altars, and breathed 1,000 incenses, sung 1,000 hymns, chanted 1,000 canticles to gods 1,000 years dead, and been told this is the way, the only way to spirituality. Dancing dervish under the love lasers till dawn, with men so beautiful they can only be artificial. Oh, I've been to the heart of the music where they say purity lies. Lies. Lies, lies, lies. The paintings, the altered states, the loves, the hates, the relationships, lies of the degenerates we've become. Some day I'll have to make Patrick leave, for his own sake as much as for the sake of my path to purity. But he is my conscience. He makes me constantly ask, am I right? Am I wrong? And he must be a strong man indeed to be able to sleep night after night with the stinking animal into which I am changing. But I will cast him off on that day when I achieve purity, because then I won't have any further need of my conscience. In an age of decadence, I alone strive for purity. I saw it once. I saw spirituality in the face, and since that day I've sought in my own human way to embody it. But give Patrick his due. I'm learning that perhaps my daily denials and asceticisms are not the best way to attain my goal. Perhaps the human way is not the way at all. For the greatest spiritual experience, I would almost call it holy, but I don't believe in God, comes when I tap head into the Rotec computers, in that instant when they cleave my personality away from my brain and spin it off through space. To Mars. I can't explain to Patrick how it feels. Like I couldn't explain it to my colleagues on the Terraform team, how it felt that first time when I tap-headed into the orbital mirrors we were maneuvering into position to thaw the polar ice caps. I've tried to tell him, as I tried to tell them, hands dancing, eyes wide and bright, of the beauty of the freedom I felt, from the strangling stench of our decaying culture, from the vice of material things, from my body and the arbitrary dictates of its biology, eating and drinking, pissing, crapping, sleeping, screwing. He doesn't understand. Kathy, don't deny your body, he says, touching it. Yours is a beautiful body. No, Patrick. Only spirit is beautiful. And a machine is beautiful. And only what is beautiful is real. But was she real? You ask. And your grandfather replies, Oh, certainly. I tell you, she was as real as you or me, as real as any of us. What use is a saint who isn't real? So you look out through the screen at the blurred steel rail that stretches straight ahead as far as you can see, right over the rusty horizon, and you think, real. Real, real as steel, real as a rail made from steel. It's easy to make up rhymes to the beat of the wheels. Diddly-dum, real, real, real as steel. An hour and a half out. Back down the train, the passengers are having lunch, the dignitaries in the first-class restaurant, everyone else from packages and parcels on their laps. Tom Engineer is sharing his lunch with you, savoury pancakes and tea, because you did not bring any lunch with you, as you never expected to be riding high at the head of the Aries Express deep in the magic Forest of Christ. You've heard a lot about the Forest of Christ, that it's under the special protection of the Lady herself. The travellers come back from it with tales of wonders and marvels, with unusual gifts and miraculous powers, that some come back with only half a mind, and some do not come back at all. Look at the trees. Giant redwoods, older than man, reaching up 300, 400, 500 meters tall. It's easy to believe that the machines that built the world are still working under the shadow of the branches, and that Catherine of Tharsis walks with them in the forest she planted 1,000 years ago. Aboard her namesake, you hurtle past at 300 kilometers per hour and wonder how St. Catherine could possibly have built an entire world. Look, son! Grandfather Tam nudges you and points to a place far up the valley where a great patch of brightness is sweeping across the Forest of Christ towards you. You hold your breath as a huge disk of light passes slowly over you on its way to the distant rim walls. If you squint up through your fingers, you can just about see the intensely bright dot of the sky mirror way up there in orbit behind all the glare. Then you feel a blow to the back of your head. You see hundreds of intensely bright dots. How many times have you been told, boy, don't stare at the sky mirrors? Your grandfather bellows. You can look at the light, but not at the mirror. But you treat yourself to one small extra peep anyway, and you think of the men from Rotec who are focusing all that light down on you, Neon Asim. Remote Orbital Terraform and Environmental Control Headquarters. You whisper the name like a charm to keep the wind and the storm at bay, and you remember what your friends told you, that the men who move the sky mirrors have grown so different from ordinary people up there that they can never ever come down. That makes you shiver. Then you pass out from under the light, but out of the rear screens you can see its progress over the valley to the plateau lands beyond. In its wake you see a tiny silver bauble bowling across the sky. Oh, look, Grandfather, a drone lighter! He gives it the barest glance, spits, and touches one of the tiny icons of Our Lady fastened above the driving desk. Then you realize what a mistake you've made, that it is the drone lighters and the rigibles of the world that have made your grandfather the last to bear the proud name of engineer. They are the reason why the museum sightings are waiting for the lady just beyond the crowds at Pulaski Station. I'm sorry, Grandfather. A hand ruffles your hair. Never mind, son. Never worry. Look, see how that thing runs. It's getting out from under the skirts of the storm, running as fast as it can. They can't take the weather. They're flimsy, plasticky things, like glorified festival kites. But we could take the weather. Go through it like a fist through wet rice paper, my boy. I tell you, Bethlehem Mary's never lost a day, not even one single hour to the weather. Rain, hail, blizzard, monsoon, none of it stops the lady. He reaches out to touch the metal window frame, and you feel like shouting, "Hooray!" Tom Engineer, what you wonder will he call himself when the lady is gone, stabs a finger at the sky screen. See that? Because of those things clutching up the sky, they have to move the weather about to suit them. That's what the mirror's for. Those Rotec boys are moving the storm up onto the plateau, where it can blow itself to glory and not harm one single delicate dirigible. Pah! He spits again. I tell you, those things have no soul. Not like the lady here. She's got a soul you can hear and feel when you open those throttles up. She's got a soul you can touch and smell like hot oil and steam. You don't drive her. She lets you become a little part of her, and then she drives you. Like old ladies. Soul, I tell you. He hunts around for words, but they evade him like butterflies. He waves his hands, trying to shape the ideas that mean so much to him, but the words will not come to him. I tell you, how can you feel part of anything when you're flying way up there, above everything? You're not part of anything up there like you're a bit of the landscape down here. I tell you, they've no soul. You know, soon it'll be just them and the robots on the freight runs, and then one day even they'll be gone. It'll be just the lighter than airs. The only engines you'll see will be in the museums, and God forbid that I should ever come to see that day. He looks at you like he wants you to back him up in what he said, but you didn't really understand what he said because the rumble of the engines and the sway of the cab as it leans into the curves and the drumming of the wheels saying, "Reel, reel, reel as steel," is sending you off to sleep. When I wake, the sight disgusts me. Gap-toothed, crack-skinned, filth-haired hag, holding splintered nails up to the mirror, whining. The mortification of the flesh, the denial of the body, hideous, futile. Sleep came hard to me last night, lying beside Patrick, staring at the ceiling. I had time and plenty to think. Letting the pieces tumble through my head, I saw how I was wrong, so magnificently wrong. The mortification of the flesh is empty. It only serves to focus the mind more closely on the body it seeks to deny. Disciplining the body does not discipline the mind, for the greater the denial, the greater the attention the body must be given. This is not the way to spirituality. So before Patrick wakes, I shower. I wash my hair. I trim my nails. I depilate. I deodorize. I even repaint the tech mark on my forehead and dress in the most nearly fashionable outfit I own. On the train downtown, I just sit and watch the people. They do not know that I was the girl with the sunken eyes and the stinking hair they were so careful not to be seen staring at. Now I'm just another face on a train. By denying the body, I only drew more attention to it. The only way to achieve purity is to escape totally from the body. But that's impossible while we're on this earth. Not so on Mars. Top-heading, for me, is like waking from a dream into a new morning. Eyes click open to the vast redscapes of Mars. You can hear it shouting, "Reel, reel," with the voice of the polar wind. Oh, let me tell you about the polar wind. For 100,000 years it blew cold and dry from the ice itself, but we've moved our orbital mirrors in over the pole and are thawing the cap. So now the winds have reversed direction, and great thunderheads of cloud are piling up layer upon layer in the north. Some day it'll rain, the first rain on Mars for 50,000 years. I'll rejoice at the feel of it on my plastic skin. I'll laugh as it fills the ditches and dikes of our irrigation systems, and I shall doubtless cry on the day when it touches the seeds of the black tulips I planted and quickens them to life. But that's in the future. Maybe this year, maybe next year, maybe 5 years from now. For the present, I take joy in lifting my head from the planting and seeing the rows of Johnny Appleseeds digging and dropping and filling and moving on. They're mine. No, they're me. I can be any one of them I choose to be, from number 11, busily spraying organic mulch over the seedbeds, to number 35, trundling back to base with a damaged tread. But I can be much more than that. If I blink back through the Rotec computer network, I can be a drone lighter, blowing bacteria into the air, or a flock of orbital mirrors bending light from round the far side of the sky, or an automated hatchery growing millions of heat-producing, oxygen-generating black tulip seeds for the Johnny Appleseeds, or a channel cutter building the fabulous Martian canals after all these millennia, or a seeker searching deep beneath the volcanic shield of Tharsis for a magma core to tap for geothermal energy, or an aviopter flying Condor Patrol high over the Mare Boreum, which will one day indeed be a sea of trees. I can be whatever I want to be. I am free. I am pure spirit, unbound to any body. And this is my vision of purity, of spirituality. To be forever free from this body, from earth and its decadence, to fly on into a pure future and build a new world as it ought to be built, as a thing of spirit, pure and untainted by human lusts and ambitions. This is a future that stretches far beyond my human lifespan. They say it'll be 800 years before a man can walk naked in the forests we're growing in Chryse. 200 years will pass after that before the first settlers arrive on the plains of Deuteronomy. 1,000 years, then, to build a whole world in. That'll give me enough time to make it a proper world. This is my vision. This is my dream. I'm only now beginning to realize how I may achieve it. But first, I must dream again. It is not the rattle of the rain that has woken you, nor the slam of a passing ore train on the slow upline. It's something far less tangible than that. It's something you feel like the crick in your neck and the dryness in your mouth, and the gumminess around your eyes that you get from having fallen asleep against the side window. So knuckle your eyes open, sniff the air. You can smell the rain, but you can smell something else too, like electricity, like excitement, like something waiting to happen. Look at the screen. What do you see? Wind-blowing billows across endless kilometres of wet yellow grass that roll away to the horizon. Low rings of hills, like the ancient burial mounds of Deuteronomy, lie across the plain. Eroded impact craters, Time Engineer tells you. This is Xanthi, a land as different can be to the forests of Chryse or the paddies of the great Oxus, a high, dry plainland, where the Grand Valley begins to slope up to the high country of Tharsis. But today the rains have come out of season to the stony plain, carried on an unnatural wind, for the Rotec engineers and their sky mirrors are driving the storm away from the People lowlands to the Sin highlands, where it can blow and rain and rage and trouble no one. The sky is hidden by a layer of low black curdled cloud, and the wind from the sea of trees blows curtains of rain across the grassland. Miserable. You ask your grandfather how much longer, and he says not long. A storm will blow out within the hour, and Xanthi's a poor land anyway, fit only for grazers and goatherds, and getting through as quickly as possible. Grandfather Time smiles his special secret smile, and then you realize that, according to the story, this is where it all happened. Where Time Engineer, your own grandfather, met the saint, and so averted a dreadful accident. Now you know where the feeling of excitement has come from. Now you know why Grandfather Time has brought you on the great lady's last haul. So you ask the old man, "This is where it all happened?" And he smiles that secret smile again and says, yes, that this is where it all happened all those years ago, long before you were even thought of. It was here the lady worked a miracle and saved 500 lives. Yes, we'll be there soon. And look, even the weather is deciding to improve. Look! Out across the hills the sky is clearing from the northwest. Light is pouring through the dirty clouds, and the rain has blown away, leaving the air jewel-bright and clear. Catherine of Tharsis explodes out into the sunlight, a shout of black and gold, and the plains about her steam gently in the afternoon sun. Lights flash on the control desk. Even though you do not understand what they mean, they look important. You direct Time Engineer's attention to them, but he just nods and then ignores them. He even sits back and lights a cheroot. You thought he'd given up those dirty things years ago, but when you ask him if there's anything wrong, he says, "Nothing, boy, nothing." and tells you she's only doing what her high station expects of her. But you haven't time to think about that, because the train is slowing down, definitely, unmistakably. Her speed is now well under 100. You look to Time Engineer, but he grins roguishly, and does not even touch the keypad to demand more speed. He just sits there, arms folded, puffing on his cheroot as the speed drops and drops, and it becomes obvious that the train is not just slowing, but stopping. The non-stop Rejoice to Llangonid Aries Express grinds past a stationary chemical train, downbound from the sulphur beds of Pavo. The engines whine as they deliver power to the squealing brakes, and the 700-ton train comes to a stand right out there in the middle of the pampas, with not a station or even a signal pylon to mark it as special and worthy of the attention of Catherine of Tharsis. A hiss of steam startles you. It is that quiet. Cooling metal clicks. Even the hum of the engines is gone. The fusion generators are shut right down. The rust-red chemical train looks almost sinister in its stillness. "What now?" you whisper, painfully aware of how loud your voice sounds. Grandfather Tom nods at the door. "We get out." The door hisses open, and he jumps out, then lifts you down to the ground. You can see the staring faces pressed to the windows all the way down the train. "Come on," says Grandfather Tom, and he takes you by the hand and leads over the slow down line. You glance nervously at the waiting chemical train, half expecting the automated locomotive to suddenly blare into life. Down the low embankment and into the tall grass. He grinds his filthy cheroot out on the ground and says, "It should be around here somewhere," and starts thrashing about. Whish, whish, whoosh, in the wet grass. You can hear him muttering. "Ah, got it. A bit overgrown, but that just goes to show how long it is since a human engineer ran this line. I tell you, in my day we kept the weeds down and polished the silverwork so bright you could see it shining from 10 kilometers down the track. Come and look at this, son." He's cleared the grass away from a small stone pedestal. Inlaid in tarnished metal is the 9-spiked wheel symbol of St. Catherine. You can feel the devotion as your grandfather bends to rub the dirt of the years from the small memorial. When it's clean and silver bright again, he bids you sit with him on the damp, crushed grass and listen as he tells you his tale. "I've told Patrick what I'm going to do. I use the simplest words, the most restrained gestures, the shortest sentences, for I know how incoherent I become when I'm excited. I did my best to explain, but all I did was scare him. Seeing me transformed, my body clean, my face pretty, again the Cathy Hahn he'd once loved, and then to hear me tell him of how I'm going to cast this world away and live forever on Mars is too great a shock for him. He does not have to tell me. I know he thinks I'm mad. More than just mad, insane. My explanations will do no good. He can't understand, and I'm not going to force him to. One favour, Patrick. You know people who can get these things. Could you get me 2 lengths of twist-lock monofibre?" "What for?" "I need it." "For your mad escape? Don't tell me. Forget it. No, Cathy." "But listen, Patrick. No. I've listened enough to you already. You're a persistent bitch. If I listen to your voice long enough, I'll find myself agreeing with whatever insane notion you suggest." "But it's not insanity. It's survival. It's the only way for me to go." Yes, the only way you can be pure, the only way you can achieve spirituality. What is it that's driven you to this, Cathy? It's suicide. That's exactly what it is." "The crazy angel, Patrick. At some time or another, the crazy angel touches us all, and we just have to go with the flow." "But he doesn't see the joke. If there's no God, how can there be any angel at all, crazy or otherwise, unless it's me? Are we not enough? There was a time when it was enough for us to have each other. What more do you want? What more is there?" "Do you really want me to answer that, Patrick?" I gave him one of my fascinating half-smiles that used to excite him so much. Now it only angers him. "Then what does Mars offer that I don't?" "Same question. This time I choose to answer it. Sanity." "Sanity? Ha! You talk to me about sanity? That's rich, Cathy Hahn. That is rich." I remain patient. I will not allow Patrick to disturb me. I will not lose my head or shout at him. To do so would only be to play the game according to his rules and his sick society's rules. Sanity, I say, in a world where words like hunger and fear and disease and war and decadence and degeneration don't have any meaning. In a world that one day will be so much more than your Earth could ever be. Freedom from a world that registers its terrorists, Patrick Byrne, and lets them kill who they will for their high and lofty registered ideals. That stinks him, but I am relentless. I am the voice of final authority. The angel is speaking through me and won't be silent. And you will let me go, Patrick. You will get me those lengths of monofiber from your car friends, because either I go or your sick society will have me off the top of a building in a week. And that is a promise, Patrick Byrne, a Cathy Hahn promise. Either way I go, either way you lose. Bitch! He roars and spins round, hand raised to strike, but no one may lay hands on the crazy angel and live, and the look in my eyes stops him cold. Serenity. Bitch! God, maybe you are an angel after all. Maybe you are a saint. Not a saint, Patrick, never a saint. Sure, don't I not believe in God? Not Saint Cathy. Just a woman out of time who wanted something more than her world had to offer. Now will you get me those bits of twistlock fibre? All right, I can't fight the crazy angel. How long? I hold my hands about half a metre apart. 2 of them, with grips at both ends and a trigger-release twistlock set to 5th second decay so they won't ever find out how I did it. I'll get them. It'll take some time. I can wait. Words flow as expressions across his face. Then he turns away from me. Cathy, this is suicide. So what? It's legal, like everything else from political murder to public buggery. It's suicide. No, not this. To stay behind, to try and live one more year on this rotting world, that's suicide. More than that, it's the end of everything, because then I'll have even thrown all my hope away. It is a story old and stale with telling and retelling, but here, sitting on the damp grass under the enormous sky, it feels as if it is happening to you for the first time. Tom Engineer's eyes are vacant, gazing into years ago. He does not even notice how his stained fingers trace the starburst shape of the Catherine wheel on the pedestal. I tell you, I thought we were done then. I'd given up all hope when that pump blew, with us so far out into the wilderness, and it was wilderness then. This was years back before Rotec had completed terraforming the Grand Valley. We were so far out that no help could ever reach us in time, not even if they sent the fastest flyer down from their sky stations, and there were 500 souls aboard, man, woman, and child. So I ordered them to evacuate the train, even though I knew right well that they could never get far enough away to outrun the blast when the fusion engines exploded. But I had them run all the same, run to those hills over there. You know, to this day I don't know if they have a name, those hills. But I thought that if they could reach the far side, then they might be safe, knowing full well that they never would. All the time I was counting off the seconds until the pressure vessel would crack and all that superheated steam would blow my beauty to glory and us with her. I can remember that I had one thought in my head that kept running round and round and round. God, save the train. Please, save the train, God. That was when the miracle happened. An afterbreath of wind stirs the grass around you. It feels deliciously creepy. I don't know if it was my calling or the train's agony that brought her, and I don't think it matters much. But on the horizon I saw a black dot way out there. He points out across the waving grass, and if you squint along the line of his finger into the sun, you too can see that black dot rushing towards you. An aviopter, black as sin and big as a barn, bigger even, circling over the line, and I tell you it was looking for me, for the one who called it. Tom Engineer's hands fly like aviopters, but he's too busy watching the great black metal hawk coming lower and lower and lower to notice him. And I swear she took the loco in her claws, boy, in her metal claws, and every bit of bright work on her ran with blue fire. Then I heard it, the most terrible sound in the world, the scream of the steam release valve overloading, and I knew that was it, and I scrambled down this bank as fast as I could and threw myself onto the ground because death was only a second behind me. And you know what I saw? Though you've heard the story 100 tellings before, this time it takes your breath away. So you shake your head, because for once you do not know. I tell you, every one of those 500 souls, just standing there in the long grass and staring for all they were worth. Not one of them trying to run, I say. So I turned myself belly up and stared too. And I tell you, it was a thing so worth the staring that I couldn't have run, though my life depended on it. They'd stripped her down and laid her bare, and unplugged the fusion generators, and by the mother of us all, they were fusing up the cracks in the containment vessel and running the pumps from 0 up to red and down again. And those pumps, those God-blinded pumps, they were singing so sweetly that day, it was like the larks of the Argyres themselves. Who, grandfather? You say, swept away by the story. Who were they? The angels of St. Catherine herself, I tell you. They had the look of great metal insects, like the crickets you keep in a cage at home, but as big as lurchers, and silver all over. They came out of the belly of the aviopter and swarmed all over my locomotive. He slaps his thighs. Well, I knew she was safe then, and I was whooping and cheering for all I was worth, and so was every man-jack of those 500 souls by the time those silver crickets had finished their work and put her back together again. Then they all just packed back into the belly of that big black aviopter, and she flew off over the horizon, and we never saw her again, none of us. So I got up into the cab, and everything was all quiet, and everything smelt right, and every readout was normal, and every light green, and I put the power on as gentle, and those engines just roared up and sang. And those pumps that so near killed us all, they were humming and trilling like they were fresh from the shop. Then I knew I'd seen a miracle happen, that the Blessed Lady St. Catherine herself had intervened and saved us all, and I tell you this, I would still never have believed it, had it not been for those 500 souls who witnessed every little thing she did. And some of them even had it recorded, and you can see those pictures to this day. Up on the track, the chemical train fires up. The shocking explosion of sound makes you both jump. Then you laugh, and up on the embankment the robot train moves off. Kunk, 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 kunk. Time engineer rises to watch it. When it's gone, he pats the small stone pedestal. So, of course, we named the engine after her, and put this here to commemorate the miracle. I tell you, all the engineers, in the days when we used to have human engineers, on the Grand Valley Run would sound their horns when they went by, as a mark of respect, and also in the hope that if they gave the lady her due, one day she might pull them out of trouble. You see, we know that the lady's on our side. He offers you a hand, and drags you up damp past from the ground. As you climb the embankment, you see all the faces at the windows, and the hands waving icons and charms and medallions and holy things. It makes you look at Catherine of Tharsis again as something not quite believable, half locomotive and half miracle. Grandfather Tam lifts you up the cab steps. Suddenly a question demands to be asked. Grandfather, then why do the trains stop now if they only used to whistle? He reaches for the flask of tea and pours you a scalding cup. Behind you the gin rumbles into life again. I'll tell you for why. Because she is not a saint of people, but a saint of machines. Remember that, because the day came when the last engineer was paid off this line, and they turned it over to the machines, and then they felt that they could honor their lady as best they knew. Lights blink red, white, green, yellow, blue all over the cab. The light glints off the holy medals and icons, but somehow it is not as pretty as it once was. As if it was aware of my imminent escape into spirituality, the ugliness is drawing closer to me. Yesterday in the train I saw a licensed beggar kicked to death by 3 masked men. No one raised voice or hand in protest. For one of the masks held out a political activist registry card for us all to see, while the other 2 beat the old man to death in accordance with their political ideals. Everyone looked out of the windows, or at the floor, or at the advertisements for sunny holidays and personal credit extensions, anywhere but at the beggar, or at each other. I am ashamed. I too looked away and did nothing. We left him on the floor of the car, for others to take care of, when we stepped off at her stop. A smart man I vaguely know with a high-caste tech mark glanced at me and whispered, "We certainly must remember to respect people's right to political expression. Goodness knows what terrible things might happen if we don't. Oh, Patrick, how many beggars have you killed in the name of political expression? Damn you, Patrick Byrne, for all the love I've wasted on a man who 100 years ago would have been hunted down and torn apart for the common murderer he was. Dear God, though I know you aren't there, what sort of a people are we when we call terrorists heroes and murder political expression? What sort of a person is it who would dare to say she loved one? A Cathy Hahn, that's what. But I will be rid of him. Escape is 2 lengths of twist-lock monofibre wrapped up in my pouch. But have I the courage to use it? Cowardice is a virtue now. Everyone has their political activist card to wave as justification for their fear. Be brave, Cathy. I like to think of myself as the first Martian at these times. It's not the loneliness that scares me. I've been alone for 24 years now, and there's no lonelier place than the inside of your skull. What terrifies me is the fear of gods. Deophobia. Maybe you're an angel after all. Maybe you're a saint, Patrick said. What I fear most is that I may become more than just a saint, that the ultimate blasphemy to all that the sacrifice of Cathy Hahn stood for will be for me to become the creator god of the world I am building. The Earth Mother, the Blessed Virgin Cathy, the cherished and adored womb of the humanity I despise. I do not want to be God. I don't even particularly want to be human. I only want to be free from the wheel. Smiles and leers greet me from friend and satire alike. Morning, Cathy. Thighs, Cathy. Day, Cathy. Breasts, Cathy. I take my chair, still warm from the flesh of its previous occupant, whom I've never known and probably never will now. Warm-up drill, codes, ciphers, and calibrations. The sensor helmet meshes with my neural implants, and nobody sees me slip the coils of monofibre from my pouch and throw a couple of loops around the armrests. Light speed will be the death of me. The monofibre is merely the charm I choose to invoke it. Okay, Cathy, top head monitoring on. Needles slip into my brain, and I slip my wrists through the loops, concealing the twist-lock control studs in my palms. I'd not thought death would be so easy. Brain scans worm across the ceiling. Listen. I've not much time to tell you this, so listen well. It takes 2 minutes for the oxygen level in the brain to fall to the critical point, after which damage is irreversible. It's easy to do this. Damage to 2 major arteries will do very nicely, provided there is no rapid medical attention. But it takes 4 minutes for the coded Tadon pulse containing the soul of Cathy Hahn to reach Mars. You know that if you add another 4 minutes return time from Rotec to Earth, that leaves you with a brain so like shredded cabbage that there's no way they'll ever be able to pour poor Cathy back into it again. I shall be free, and I shall live forever as a creature of pure spirit. I've invented a totally new sin. Is it fitting, then, that I should become a saint? All I need do is press the buttons. The molecular kink in the monofibre will contract, neatly severing my wrists. 1/5 of a second later they will dissolve completely. Light speed will do the rest. All I need do is press the buttons. They're hidden in my palms, slick with sweat. Okay, Cathy. Counting down to persona transfer. Preliminary Tadon scan on. Transfer pulse in 5 seconds. 4. The mortification of the flesh, I whisper. Behind me someone shouts, Too late! 1. I press the buttons. Green lights all the way down the line on the final run into Llangonid. Clear road. Dirty freighters pulled into sidings blare their horns, and ugly, ugly robot locals squawk their nasty klaxons as the lady races by. Suburban passengers blink as she streaks by. By the time the shout reaches their lips, she's around the next bend and leaning into the one after that like a pacehound. and all the lights are green. More magic. Grandfather Time tells you that you never get a full run of greens coming into Llangonnid. No, not even for the Aries Express. Never ever. It must be more magic, of the same kind that let the lady reach the incredible 450 kilometers per hour out there on the flats beyond Hundred Lakes. Grandfather Time tells you that she never touched 450 before, never ever, not even 400. Why, the people who built her had told him themselves that she would blow apart if she went over 390. You reckon the engineers know nothing about engines and their special magic. After all, they're just engineers. But Grandfather Time is an engineer. Looking out of the side windows, even a leisurely 250 seems frighteningly fast in these crowded suburbs. Canal, flash houses, flash fields, flash park, flash factories, flash. You can feel your eyes widening in apprehension as the stations and the signals hurl themselves out of the distance at you, and all the lights are green. That can mean only one thing. She's doing this, isn't she, Grandfather? A station packed with round-mouthed commuters zips by. Time engineer lights a cheroot. Must be. I've hardly had to lay a finger on those buttons for the past hour or so. Beneath you the brakes start to take hold, slowing you down from your mad rampage through outer Llangonnid to a more civilized pace. You say, she must really love this train very much. Grandfather Time looks straight ahead of him down the silver track. After all, she did save it. But it wasn't the people, was it, Grandfather? It was nothing to do with those 500 souls. She saved the train because it was the train she wanted to save. All those people were extra, weren't they? They didn't matter to her one bit, boy. And you said she's a saint of machines, didn't you? Not a saint of people. That's why she loves the train. Why, she loved it enough not to let it die, isn't it? If there hadn't been a single person there, she would still have saved the train, wouldn't she? But if that's true, why do people love her? Love her? Who said anything about loving her? I tell you, boy, I have little love for Catherine of Tharsis. Respect, yes. Love, no. And I'll tell you why. Because if she hadn't thought the train was worth saving, if she hadn't loved the train, she would just have let it blow those 500 people to hell without a single thought. That's the kind of God those crazy Cathars are worshipping. But as to why they love her, I don't know. Do you have any idea why people would love someone like that? He looks straight at you. You've been expecting this question. You know that he's never been able to answer it himself, and that's the reason why he brought you along on this ride. I don't know what I think. If she's really like that, then I think that most people must be very foolish most of the time, especially when they have to look for someone to help them when things go wrong, and then put the blame on when things don't happen like they want. People are like that. I think if I were a saint like St. Catherine, I'd be a saint of machines too. Then I wouldn't care what people said about me or thought of me, because I wouldn't be doing anything for them, and they could cry away and pray away all day like those silly Cathars and penitential mendicants and poor sisters of Tharsis, and I wouldn't care one bit, because machines are never foolish. Catherine of Tharsis has slowed right down. The end of the journey is near now. Tomorrow Time Engineer and you will be flying home on one of those dreadful dirigibles, and Catherine of Tharsis will be taken away to the museum for the foolish people to stare at and marvel over her record-breaking final run. And now you understand. Grandfather, of course I'd be a saint of machines, because I could fly with the aviopters and the sky mirrors and even the great sky wheel herself. And I could burrow with the seekers and swim with the mercibles, but most of all, I could run with the Lady of Tharsis faster than she ever ran before, and show off to everyone what a wonderful engine she is before they put her away for good in a museum. People are always moaning and complaining about their troubles and their problems. They won't let you run and be free from them. People won't let you do things like that. Ah, the ways of saints and children. Time Engineer says as the lady rumbles over the Raj Canal into the glass-eyed dome of Pulaski Station. Already you can hear the roars and the cheers of the crowds, and every loco in the yards is sounding its horn in salute. Here, button 3, Grandfather Time says, and you reply to the people with the wonderful blare of the steam horns. You press and press and press that button, and the trumpets sound and sound and sound until the notes shatter against the glass roof of the station. And how the crowds cheer! Tom Engineer is hanging out of the window, waving to the mobs of petal-throwing Cathars as Catherine of Tharsis glides into Platform 3 as smooth. You're sliding the other side window open, ready to cheer, when something stops you. An odd feeling, like a persistent itch in the nose that suddenly stops, or a noise in your ears that you never hear until it goes away, a kind of click. You shake your head, but it's gone, and you shout and wave for all you're worth to the excited people. They wave and call back to you, but you do not see them because you are really thinking about that click. For a second or so it puzzles you. Then you realize that it's nothing very important. It's only the empty space filling in where once there might have been a saint.